Hello there, welcome to another live stream. I think I'm live. Looks like I'm live now. Yeah, welcome to the debug number 2. They don't really follow on from each other. I don't think it's too complicated. But what we're going to do, what I'm going to look at in this video, as the sort of thumbnail and the title alludes to, is page speed. Our old friend page speed as developers is one of the most, I'd say, one of the most contentious issues that we as devs have to fight off constantly and have to sort of deal with. Hello Mitch, hello Sam, thanks for joining us. Hello Ashu as well, thanks for joining us. Obviously bang a greeting in the chat and I'll say hello if that matters or means anything. Yeah, so page speed, and obviously this is page speed from a Magento perspective, but what I'm hoping to do is obviously it can apply to any sort of modern website framework or what have you, mainly because I think there's a missing link. Well, there's a massive missing link, and it goes back to sort of the design phase of a. I'll have a look at that for you. I'll have a look in a sec. I'll try and get to that. Ashu. I've got a bit of an agenda for this one, and it probably will help you out, because at some point you're going to get a site live and you're going to need. Now then, Steve, good to see you. I'll hear from you. Page speed is one of the, and I think that what I was saying is, I think there's a massive disconnect between when a site's designed and how it's designed and how the design is considered through all that process with the designer's ideas, the client's ideas, the sort of inspiration of where the designer gets their sort of ideas from for sites, and that's normally by looking at sites that clients like and things like that. And obviously I'm oversimplifying the process, and I don't want to do designers a disservice here, and I'm not having a go at designers, but I think there's a massive disconnect between that process and how sort of how hard and heavy that process is with regards to filtering out what's best for that client's brand and what's best for that client's site through the lens of the brand and through the lens of sort of UX and stuff. And then months and months later, when the site goes live, suddenly everybody's concerned with how fast it is and the performance, like almost as if that couldn't be considered right at the beginning. Well, I'm here to sort of say that it should be. It should be. If your sort of mantra as a agency or developer or a team is, we're going to build performance sites, which mine is, or at least I like to think mine is, we're going to build performance sites. Mohammed Adel is, hello, if you're starting to learn Magento 2 from scratch, how would you go about doing it? Subscribe to my channel straight away. It's the easiest. Simply, everything's on there, everything you need to know. Don't worry about the Magento docs, just subscribe to my channel. So yeah, that process of I think the design needs to be based on performance best practices, and I'm going to sort of touch on some of these things today, because one of the myths that has sort of carried with Magento or been carried with Magento for probably a decade now is that it's somehow inherently slow. It's that Magento's slow. You have to have a massive server to get around it. You have to pay loads a month for a server to make Magento fast because it's slow. I've said this myself. I've been guilty of this. I've done streams. I've done webinars and stuff where I'm sort of promoting headless and headless apps through JavaScript and the like. And I'm shitting on Magento. I'm saying no, it's monolithic. It's inherently slow. All you can do is cache it. Well, I've since found out it's not true, and it was and what prompted me this, what prompted this, and what sent me on this journey of trying to get to the nub of this problem, or at least come to some sort of consensus in my own mind of whether Magento is slow or not, or what, and also what parts of Magento are slow as well, was the last live stream I did, when somebody pointed out in the chat about a theme called Haver theme, and it really piqued my interest. And it made me think, like, why do the developers of that theme think that they have to throw Magento out? And one of the things in their manifesto was, we get, you know, headless or PWA level page speed scores without having to go fully headless. So that got me thinking, surely Magento can do that, because when you consider, and this is only from my experience working with headless frameworks and how they deploy and static sites, it's one of them things where it's static. We have a pub static directory. Magento 2 is the bit that hits the browser is static. Like, yeah, we have Knockout.js, and yeah, we have PHP calls for certain functionality, but when a say SEO agency or client or even yourselves runs a lighthouse test, like they're looking at the homepage. They're looking at the pages that are exposed to being slow, like inherently slow. And I've always thought, oh, well, it's the way Magento's page builder works, or it's the way Magento, and even before that, it's the way Magento deals with the way you have to put HTML into Magento because you're using WYSIWYG, whatever. It's the way Magento's page builder works, or it's the certain things that are poorly written, and it's just not true. And I can without further ado, obviously I've waffled on a bit, but I'm hoping I've sort of set up what I'm going to talk about. And what I'm going to talk about today is how to get. So basically, I'll just finish off my point, which was. So from those page speed scores that people throw in front of you when they've tested their own page, no one ever tests the product page, by the way. You know, the landing page, the hard working pages, because they're up in the 90s by default, particularly if you're built off Luma or Blank. They're up there. Everyone concentrates on landing pages with the images and stuff, basically stuff like what I'm building in the page builder here now. And there's some best practices, and what you end up doing, instead of looking at the content and how it's been laid out and how images have been put in there and all these sort of intricate design-led, if you like, detail, you have developers jumping through hoops trying to minify stuff and trying to remove unused extensions and trying to make sure that, you know, varnish is configured correctly and stuff. And I'm here to tell you that you don't necessarily... Yes, you need to do all that, and I can show you quickly how to do all that, and there's like a handful of things that the developer should be doing. And then for me, all of the big wins within page speed scores can be achieved within the page builder. So, without any further ado, what I've done here is I've set up this is like my demo store that I started building in the last live stream. And I've set up what I think is kind of like a standard, I mean, it's not that big, a standard long page for a home page, you know, like with images knocking about. We've got products on scrollers, which I'm going to talk about in a bit more detail in a bit. We've got other images. We've got images saved as background images, so as part of the column or as part of sliders. I've even got a video in there which plays from YouTube, and I'm gonna and basically I've turned all of my things, all of my sort of tactics that I use to try and get this score up from development purposes, I've got them switched off, right? So that's why I'm getting a page score at the minute of 83, which, to be fair, isn't too shabby, because I was just doing a bit of sort of research online, and one of the sites that always gets pointed out at design phase as one of them ones that, oh, can we have a site like this, is Nike. And I mean, look at the state of that page speed score. Oh, by the way, I'm only talking about desktop today. I will talk about mobile's old kettle of fish, different kettle of fish, which I'm going to look at in the future. And then we move up to sort of the more supermarkets, you know, the supermarket types. So I was looking at Waitrose, Ocado, stuff like that. They're all in sort of the high 80s or in the mid to high 80s, which is pretty good. And then Brewdog, which is famously a Magento, look at that, it's a 92. Magento is fast, and Magento's page builder is very good. That's I'm going out. It's very good. These sites are not Magento, I don't think. This site is, and obviously my site is. So we can achieve an 100 out of this, and we're going to get an 100 today. Right. So I've switched everything off. So I'm going to go through that first, and it's really simple. The sort of the way you sort of get to this point, the way you sort of get all your development stuff done and then start working on the page builder. And you can do this locally as well. So you don't need to be on a server, you know, a sort of a massive, you know, you don't need to be on your server performing this. You can do it locally. And as long as you've got, I mean, I say as long as you've got your install in production mode, and I can go through that. So first of all, let's just have a quick look at make sure that we're in production. Right. So I'm just going to make sure we're in production, so that jumps into, I think I was in developer mode. Because obviously production mode is going to sort of optimize the entire sort of call stack, if you like, and you can see this. I won't do this. I might do it later in the video if I've got time. But a real good way to sort of make sure that before the page speed sort of metrics come in, you've got something which is called time to first byte, and that's how quickly your server can get the web page into Google's lighthouse for it to then be assessed. And a good way of, and obviously not all Magentos are created equally. If you've done a lot of custom work, particularly around collections and stuff, you see I've put that there. That's a big no-no. Collections with an asterisk getting everything. You can find that out by switching to developer mode and running the profiler. And it basically gives you a list of all of the of basically the call stack of Magento, and it tells you how many seconds each thing's are taking to load, and that all contributes to that first load. So if you can sort all that stuff out, then you know that you're onto a, if basically everything's under a second. I might show you it later, but it means I'll have to switch everything back to show you it. And I think actually one of the things that you can do is if I turn this on in production mode, I'll show you how little that is. Like once everything's compiled, like all of this, what's happening now, all this compilation, that's all getting compiled for production mode. So it's making that process of saving Magento, so before your front end static files have been saved, of saving Magento as optimized as possible. That's what that bit's doing. That's what production mode does. And then we have these settings of sort of my optimum here, and this is the next thing that you would do. This is something that you could do when you first deploy to the server, depending on how you deploy, or you could run it on the server, but it's one of those things that you need to, if you're starting to test page speed, these things need to be set to the following basically. So I would have this one on, and I'm going to change these requests. I would not advise using JavaScript bundling for all kinds of reasons. I would static sign, I would merge all these files, and then if we just paste this into, so this is getting your site production ready basically, but locally, so ready for testing. So like was at 89, was at an 89 before I did this, before I made sure production mode was on. I think it was already on, to be fair, and also static, set everything to set all these options to the most, so to optimum. And there was one more thing. There is a setting, so we'll just have a look at the cache status. I tell you what, we can have a look in IM file. So this is important as well. Magento's full page cache is very important with regards to one of the things in here, which is saving static assets. So Magento's full page cache, as you probably know, you can link it up and configure it with Varnish. Now, once you're in a server environment, absolutely do that. But I'm going to show you it doesn't necessarily make much of a difference when you're testing page speed scores, but it's going to help your site be fast, right? So make sure that you've got no errors, invalidated caches on your live site, on the site on the internet. Make sure you've got no invalid caches, and if the cache is all set up, that makes a massive difference to the speed index, essentially this one here. So I just wanted to make sure that was switched on, which it is. All my caches are switched on here. So basically, locally, I'm trying to replicate now a production site. So I've switched all this on. I'm just going to make sure the site still works, because I might have to deploy static content again. Yeah, I'm just going to have to run the big four while it's in production mode, just to get everything straightened out. So this will take a couple of seconds just to go through. So the big four, I've said it before, is setup upgrade, DI compile, static content deploy, and cache flush just at the end. So I'm just going to make sure. I think Cache Flush would have dealt with that, but I'm going to do this just to make sure I'm not missing a trick. And then we're going to run the Lighthouse page speed thing again, metrics again, and see if we can get this up from an 83. And I'm hoping we can. And then I'm going to go through some other sort of quick wins. Obviously, there's other things you can do, like there's something called Bailey, which is good for sort of bundling your static assets, something like that. But obviously you can use things like that. But from what I've found out, you don't need to. If you just keep the content if you have your content, you address the content first. If you have your content in a common sense way, so things like how big are your images and how big do they need to be, stuff like that. I think we have these conversations across all frameworks, whether it's WordPress, Magento, even if you want to build yourself a super fast headless app that hits 100 no matter what. As soon as you start putting massive images into that app, you're going to drop page speed metric. You're going to drop, and because Google and the way it works is it looks at how optimized your assets are, and obviously if you're saving things in next gen formats, which is like a top on there, that's going to help with that. But it isn't a full fix. Like you've got to use common sense with regards to the content you're putting in, and also how it's structured is important as well. And all of these things then become a bit of a trade-off, so it's just on static content now. All of these things that I'm talking about there become that trade-off of the design. You know, how big was the images designed at for then to manage the client's expectations of how big they've got to enter their images into the page builder, and whereabouts in the page builder they need to enter their images. And also when you've got things like featured products on the homepage, do you need to show them in a scroller? Because when you get down to the nitty gritty of getting up from 90 to 95 to 100, whether you show your products in a scroller or whether you show just the products that display, like say this shows 5 across here. Say this shows 5 across in this section here. I know it's all broke at the minute, but 5 across there. Do you need that scroller? Because it does affect page speed. So these are all things that become that trade-off. Just going to give this a refresh now with any luck. It'll come back. Nope, I haven't quite finished deploying yet, I don't think. Nope. Just give this a second. Right, that should now be all okay. Fingers crossed. Yeah, we're back. Right. So now we're in, as far as I'm aware, I might have to check it, we're in production mode. Yeah, right. We'll run the test now. We'll run the test. So I'll just kill this one, and I'm just going to run desktop performance test on this now. So it was at 89. Let's see if we can bump it up. We'll give that a sec, and then we'll try. What I want to do is I want to talk through optimizing it. Right, it's still on an 89. Okay. A few things have gone, but it's still on an 89. Right, so we're going to talk about some other bits and bobs here. I'm just going to run that again. Right, so here's an important one, and I think it might just be the content now that's holding it back. Right, so the next thing I would do in terms of a developer thing to do, I'm just going to refresh this admin here and just log back in, is I'm going to enable, because I've disabled it purposely, I'm going to enable Yerio's WebP images, because that makes a difference. So that'll kill that one there, the one that says save images in a next gen format. It'll kill it for certain images, and I'm going to talk about, right, so it's still on an 89. Right then, so it's gonna sort this one out, right, which is simply done. So it's a free extension, and if you search for it on the internet, you can get it and install it. But I've got it installed, but I've got it switched off. So there it is, Yerio WebP. Enable it. and then I'm just going to give my cache a refresh. Now I might have to just deploy static content, but we'll find out. And we can tell, we'll be able to tell straight away if we've got WebP images. So I think this one would be a WebP image. Yeah, there we go, look. There you go. So we've got the images saving in WebP. So we'll see if that makes a difference. So I'll just run this again. Okay. We might go through some other stuff, what's causing, I've got to keep that open. Still 89. Right, so let's have a look at why that might be. And I think it could be down to the content. So we've got next gen images. So see, we've not got much left to sort of deal with here in terms of technical stuff, right? So reduce unused CSS. Now this is a pain in the ass with Magento, but to be perfectly honest, if you get everything else right, you haven't got to worry about these. These will drop off to almost be sort of inconsequential. This is one that we can deal with a customization, which I've posted a video about last night, but I'm going to talk about. Right, let's just jump onto the home page here. Right, so I've purposefully put an image here. See this orange one? This is my first image. And if you look at this image here, it is massive. It's 1920, it's an HD image basically, 16:9 image, and I'm squeezing it into that little space. And I've got a feeling that the page speed score don't like it. Now, and that's in a slider, right? But I can still have that image if I wanted it. But I tell you what, if I move this image, no, that's the video, this image to the front, which is lesser. Can't remember how big that is. Give that a refresh. So now this image is at the front, which is a, I knew it's 1900 as well, but I don't think that's as heavy. But we'll see if that makes any difference, because it does lazy load the other images behind a slider. Now sliders aren't great for page speed. You're best off, if you can, just with one image at the top. That's your optimum. But if you want a slider, then it does. Magento's page builder does actually deal with the fact that you're loading bigger things in the background that aren't necessarily showing. 90, right? So it's give me, right, I'm in the 90 now because it's able to load that image quicker. So there's some other bits and bobs to knock off here. Hang on, that's dark acid. Right, so this one here, this is actually dealt with by Varnish once you're on a server. You see my TTL's none here. Now, I ain't particularly liking the fact that my TTL's none. But that's a local thing. So again, I don't think we really need to worry about that right now. Okay, so we're also going to do a couple of other things in the page builder to see if we can get that score up. So let's have a look at this one here. Right, so this image is an image field, right? So I've made a customization to this, which I've done a video about last night. This thing here that it asks for, image elements do not have explicit width and height look. That's because when Magento by default outputs these, I've got it put in there, it doesn't have an explicit width and height for desktop or for mobile. It don't have a field to enter it in the image one. So, but it does in the text one. So, say for example, here's a text block, and I wanted to add an image to this. I could actually add images that way, and it gives me the ability to add an explicit width and height. But I don't always want to do that because this can cause other problems. It can cause images to lose their shape and all sorts. So you want to be using the image block, right, where you can. So I have added 4 extra fields in. One that outputs the width and height as a tag, and one that does it for mobile as well. And I've done that in this little bit of code here. So again, it's in the video that I posted last night. Check it out, and you can do this quite simply in Magento. It has a nice CLI interface to be able to customize and add custom fields and even add extra layouts and stuff basically, add things to the page builder, a bit like what you would do with ACF in WordPress, if any of you is familiar with WordPress. So I'm going to add some actual sizes to this now, and for the purposes of this video I'm going to add it for the sizes of the actual image that's in there, which is 1280 by 1280 by 778. 1280 by 778. So I'm just going to do desktop for now. So that's that image. Now this is an image as well, as you can see, and this one is going to be even smaller. So I'm actually showing, I think this image, it's actually 580 by 372. Oh, 580 by 372. By 372. Save that. So we'll make those both the same for the purpose of this. Right, another thing I'm going to do is, as you can see, this one's showing the top 5 products, for example, in gear, right? So if you can have that difficult conversation with your client and say, look, you don't need to show 20 products in this slider. Can you just show the 5? It's going to affect your page speed scores, right? So we're gonna make that 5. It's going to have a positive effect even on your page speed scores. So we're going to add another 5 to that. I think I had some evidence of that. I think I had some evidence of that. Where were we? It was in the page speed score itself. There's something that points to it. Might have been in minimized to it, but no. Where is it? No. It comes up when it's one of the last things in the end. Yeah, actually, added, by the way, the other thing that adding widths and height tags do is it helps with the cumulative layout shift stat here, which is quite a big one in the wheel of like page speed scores. These 3 are quite big, so it is worth taking the time to add the widths and heights to your images. I'm going to do these bottom 2 as well. And that one is, sorry about how painfully slow my scrolling is. So we've got image, which was 580 by 372. I know all that. Right, I'm going to save this now. I'm going to save this and see if that has made any discernible difference. Just give this a refresh, make sure my tags are at least on this one. Yep, so I've got my width and height tags on there now. And I'm going to rerun this. Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed it's gonna work. And boost them. I'm hoping that it's not going to have anything to do with my live streaming. Right, 93. So I'm getting up there. You see how I've repaired cumulative layout shift by adding those tags, which is a really important one. So the next ones are, the efficient cache policy. Let me just make sure that the cache is actually enabled. Yeah, okay, cache is enabled. I'm in production mode. Okay, I'm happy about that. Right then, and all the other stuff. Yeah, we're minified. Okay, so let's have a look at some other differences. So I've pulled that. Is there anything else in here? So that's still showing quite a few images there. Now, are these being saved as WebPs now? Yeah, they are. Great. Okay, so they're all next gen as well. Images. Right, I'm just going to make sure, before I move on, that this is only showing 5 as well. I mean, 93 is not bad, is it? Anybody's going to be happy with 93 anyway, but let's see if we can make it even better. So, we'll just set that to 5 as well. Okay, let's give this a bump. Obviously these scores are going to fluctuate slightly, but if you get it up there, then the only way it can go is down, innit? So you can work with your client, work with the people entering your content to sort of say, look, I'm going to get it, the maximum I can get you based on 94, nice one. The maximum I can get you, well hopefully is 100. Render blocking again. The maximum I can get you is 100, and it's your job to just keep it as close to 100 as possible. Obviously there's always going to be trade-offs. Now I'm wondering whether this is the key now. So I'm going to replace this slider with I'll tell you what, I'm going to keep the slider, but I'm going to remove, no, I'll tell you what, I'm going to change the image, because it was still a big image this. So I'm going to change this first image that loads. Obviously it's going to be to a crapper looking image, but hopefully it'll illustrate a point. Right, just go to home, and this one's good. So that's only 1280. So I'm reducing the size of this image quite significantly. Like I say, there's going to be a balance to be struck, definitely. But let's see what just changing that image does to our score. So it don't look too bad. I mean, I'm using a full width template as well. There's causes to say that you might want to make it all one column to really optimize it, because obviously it's stretching that image. But let's see what this does. Still. Okay. I'm worried about this speed index. That normally on my system isn't as bad, so it's kind of replicating a little bit of, you know, in terms of a little bit like it's acting a bit like a server. Largest content paintfall. Right, let's have a look at what else we can do with this slider. So let's see what happens if I remove the big image from it and keep the video for now. Refresh. So as you can see, I'm simulating throttling every time, and I think this is on a slow 4G connection. It's testing it on a slow 4G connection. So to be fair, these scores they're decent, but I want more. 95. Right, so I've removed the bigger image. So I think we're getting to the point now where decisions have to be made about this slider and whether there's any point to it. Let's just see what the difference is between the slider, between having a slider, sorry, and having just an image in there. So 1280 by 460. So I'm gonna, right, obviously it's smaller. I'm not gonna get that background thing right now. I just want to see what it does to page speed scores, and then we can deal with that. So I'll just make sure this is looks alright. It's center aligned, and it was 1280. Because otherwise I'm gonna get hit by that again. Now I've changed it from a background image to a foreground image. 1280 by 460. Yeah, and we're gonna save that. Obviously these things can have like buttons and things over them. I don't think this one can, but you can have them as background images, you know, like static. It doesn't just have to be a static image, but this is obviously just for testing purposes. You know, you can do more than just upload an image. I'm not saying you have to like really sort of compromise on functionality and calls to actions and stuff like that. I think you can still get you know, decent layouts. There we go. So I challenge you to find me a website anywhere on the internet that has a slider that in headless that can get 100 page speed, because that's what we've just done. We've just got 100 page speed by changing a slider from, you know, big images, big wide images, to a respectable sized image, and we're suddenly, I mean, you can see how quickly this kicks in now. Look, we're getting no blocking time, 0, because the slider don't have to load and then load in. Magento is fast. It's your content what is slowing it down. You know, that I think is the overriding message here. That's an interesting question. That is there a way to give priority to some elements in lazy load? The lazy loading, Magento's, if we're talking about Magento's default lazy loading, it's a bit of a mystery, to be honest. I don't know why it does the things it does. I don't know where that tag came from, why it does the things it does. Because I always used to use a plugin. I think it was by MageFan for lazy loading. But I don't bother with that anymore. I don't bother with the lazy loading plugin anymore. And the reason is I did a test where I had a store. It was this store where I saved the images via lazy loading. You know, so basically those images weren't coming up in, you know, if we're on a category page, but even on a home page, on this page here, basically, all of these images wouldn't load. Like, they wouldn't load until you scroll down to them. So when I hit page load on my screen, my squarish looking screen here, this image and this image would load, nothing else would load. And you'd be able to see that in Network. You'd be able to go to images and see them all loading. And I compared that to just loading all the images as WebP. And WebP was 1 point higher. So I've settled on the fact that WebP, loading them as WebP, is more important than lazy loading. And because I think I've seen things in this page speed, in this lighthouse, where if you've got lazy loading on, and I think this might touch on your point with giving priority, it picks up on lazy loading things that are in the script. So if you lazy load something that's in your viewport, it marks you down for it. So all of the benefits, obviously it depends on how long your page is done it. So if you've got a really long page and there's 100 images to load, well, that might be more efficient to lazy load those images when a person scrolls down, versus like having the impact of one negative sort of metric, if you like to say that, well, your main image is getting lazy loaded even though it's in frame. But if you've got a respectably sized, you know, homepage, and you're not getting the benefits below the fold, then I would say don't have lazy loading at all. Just have WebP. And just load all your images as WebP, because that's what we're doing here. This is a WebP image because I'm loading it in the foreground, and obviously Google's loving it. Google's absolutely loving it. But yeah, see, I'm getting marked. This was it. I'm getting marked down here, and it's not lazy loading. It's not lazy loading. It's just got the tag on it, which Magento's puts on it. And I haven't looked at detail of this, but if anyone can find out how to get rid of this when you're in frame, or when you're in page, when you're in the viewport, if you like, then that would be a cracking little module to write to get rid of that in viewport. Because I think you probably still could do with it in the other sections. It's obviously it's inconsequential, isn't it, whether they're loading there or not. Yeah, so that's the page builder. That's how powerful this page builder can be. And there's a few other things about it as well. Shall I show you the most annoying thing about the page builder? This, when you've got a long page and you've got a scrolling mouse like mine, and then you think, I want to edit that section, and it sends you back to the top. Sort that out, Magento, please. But when you're in your page builder, these were like before I started working with the page, because I've never bothered working with it. I've always left it to clients, like and content input people, like people not as important or as skilled as myself, obviously, doing this type of work. So I've never really gone in hard on it and really had a look at it. And now I've been, so I was always sort of in the back of my mind a bit worried about it, a bit worried about what sort of code it's outputting onto the front end and stuff like that, because I've never really looked in any detail. And one of the things that's great about this page builder, the default Magento one by the way, is that it doesn't allow for a lot of nesting, and that, because that can have a detrimental effect on page speed scores. Nesting, you know, like rows within rows, columns within columns. It sort of by default natively doesn't allow it. So I've got this row here, I'm able to add columns to it, right? But I'm not able to add columns within that column, look. It always adds it next to it, which to a client is going to be a pain in the ass, because they're probably going to want a more intricate layout. And if they do, I would say get in touch with your developer. They should be able to write you a block or a widget or something to be able to achieve the layout that you're after within a column, by bringing in a static block or something like that, and then then that developer can write that HTML code in a PHTML file that gets output to that page, and make it more efficient, because you just simply, it's not going to let you do it. It like builds in that fail safe for you, sort of rightly or wrongly, I suppose, because again, it's down to that compromise, isn't it? I would say, you know, the client's argument would be, well, I want that layout. I don't care about my page speed score if it takes a couple of points off. Well, Magento's trying to help you there by saying, keep your layouts simple. So that goes all the way back. That wraps up that in terms of going all the way back to your design process and going, working with your designers to say, are we keeping this as simple as possible? Can we make something look great? It can be full width, it can be anything like that. Can we make it look great, but can we keep the actual layout simple? How much nesting have we got going on? How much is actually getting built in the page builder? How many background images with foreground text are we going to have to use? Because all these things all of these things matter, and it's a real trade-off. So a couple of other things that I wanted to cover was, I've done some experimentation between working on blank theme and working on Luma. There's no difference. Like, there is no discernible difference in page speed, load speed scores, even though Luma arguably outputs more CSS and stuff like that. You don't get any benefit from starting from a sort of a lesser framework, if you like, or a framework with less detail in it, if you like. Also, the actual Magento category and product pages, like I mentioned before, like the page speed scores on those are always, if you've got your WebP images, are always pretty good. They're always up in the high 90s, and probably I could do another live stream on looking at them hard working pages. But this is like the most sensitive area, I think, these pages. And we're not just talking about the home page. We're also talking about, like, if someone's making landing pages. Here's one with a slightly different layout. I can't remember what the score is on this. We'll just run a quick page speed score. If someone's running, you know, it's got a few bits and bobs on it. It's a bit tight looking, but you know, if someone's creating landing pages, anything where the page builder's involved, I think, and it's not always intentional, but I think mistakes can be made in terms of the types of images that you're uploading. Yeah, it's a 99. I wonder what I could do to improve that. But yeah, 99 is pretty good. So these are like top draw page speed scores in a Magento, in a standard Magento. And as we say, obviously I've only picked a couple of sites online here, Nike, because Nike's the one that all our designers just absolutely love, and they always go to it and go, oh, look how great it looks. And Brewdog, I've got a message for you if you're watching, which you're not, but it'd be amazing if you was. Get the WebP image plugins free, year get it installed, and you're going to get yourself you're going to get yourself another point there. You're going to go up to a 93. But that's a Magento, and this is why I love it, why I love Magento. It always surprises me, it never fails to surprise me in terms of how good it can actually be, and how with a little bit of common sense and a little bit of conversation with your clients and that, you can really get some high performing sites out of it. So I think that's 45 minutes. That just about wraps this one up. Unless anybody in the chat has got any specific questions regarding what I've been through today, specifically with page speed and sort of how you achieve that through the page builder. I'll give you a couple of seconds to think about that. Thanks for everyone who's watched, by the way. That's absolutely brilliant. It's had more views than the last one, which is really good. And I hope that it's helped, it's helped people. Particularly, hopefully it's bust some myths. I'll tell you what, just before I go, a little bonus. I'm going to turn on. This is where it's getting quite devy now, but I'm just going to turn on the profiler. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to turn on the profiler in production mode and just show you something that is key to it. Sort of underpins all this. And I had it here, so I'm just going to bob this on. Should have turned my Slack notifications off, shouldn't I? Oh, you're welcome. Thank you, Steve. Thank you. Well, yeah, I live to give. Let's have a quick look at profiling, because this is a key thing for us to know, right? So this is your profiler. So this is showing this is showing this thing that I talked about right at the beginning of the video, where this is the stuff that happens in Magento before this page speed test gets hold of it, right? So if there's any problems or like choke points, this is where it will come up, right? So what this is telling me here is that it's taking 1.37 seconds to actually load Magento, right? So that's all right. I'm happy with that because that's below 2 seconds. Then, because we've done such good work in making sure this is as optimized as possible, it takes less than half a second to give that content that first paint, or it takes half a second there, which keeps us under 2 seconds by my maths, which is the industry standard as far as I'm aware. If you can get that down any, and normally by good page caching you can. Yeah, you see on second load, you see that first one, I'd flushed my cache and it was 1.3. So here's another lesson learned. Try not to flush your cache. Try not to flush your cache in unless you've done something major. Like, try not to flush your cache. Try and get all your indexes running on background processes. That's going to help. And also keep your all caches just enabled at all time. If you only flush the ones that become invalidated. And I'll show you what I mean by that. So this is a sort of a tip for merchants, because it's very easy for somebody to update their content on the front end, see one of these, not see what they're expecting to see, not want to wait a minute for their indexes to update and flush this cache. Well, you've just seen the difference between that load time for me, which was Magento loading in 1.3 seconds, to Magento loading in 0.2 seconds, right? Or 0.02 seconds. And that's the bedrock, the foundations that this is all pinned on, basically. So if that's like 4, 5, 6 seconds, it don't matter what you're doing here, people are going to sod off and not bother with your site, because that's unacceptable, isn't it? So take that away with you. Magento 2, Magento is a static site, and it is fast. It is fast. So could you show again how to run this profiler? Yeah, so basically what I've done there, mate, just before I go, is I'd ran there. So it's dev profiler enable HTML, and it puts that sort of HTML thing at the bottom there. And then I flush cache as well, and then refresh it, see what it is once the cache is flushed, which should be higher, and then see what it is once the cache is kicked in. And yeah, I just want to say, like, if you're running your own, if you're running custom queries and that, and you've got a bit of customization there on the home page, getting products or whatever, make sure that you don't attributes to select everything, because that is going to come up. That's going to come up in your profiler. You'll be able to identify it straight away. It's going to come up in your profiler. But yeah, you can see that it's a lot smaller now. I've flushed the cache. Look, I can't scroll down as far. There's only these things that are outside of the cache, basically. So that's not much. Okay, I think that'll do. But thanks for joining us. I'm going to try and up the sort of live stream content, because I really enjoy doing it. I think we cover loads of stuff that, when I do a video that into live stream, I sort of stick to one point, and obviously they're short and sweet, but this one, I like the how long form it is. I love that people have been chatting to each other. Obviously send it around your mates if they're Magento. If they're not, let's get them into it. And yeah, I think 50 minutes is I can't provide my email through this, but We'll find a way. I'll set. And I know, mate. I'd love to help you out, but it's just really difficult at this point. Right, I'll try and get in touch with you on comments on another video or some other way. Ashu. I appreciate your involvement, though. I really do. And thanks everyone. And now I'll see you in the next one.